Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Guys, welcome back to another episode of entitled People. Where in today's episode, you'll hear about entitled people doing some outrageous things. Seriously, you guys are in for a wild ride today as always. Guys, the stories will leave you shaking your heads, and I hope you enjoy them, and do hit that subscribe button for future tales. So, for some quick background, I had a tumor on my spine a few years ago. Luckily, it was removed, and I'm pretty healthy overall now. But not so lucky, as I can't walk anymore. So into meeting the entitled mom. Last week, I had a doctor's appointment as a follow-up to some issues I'd been having. Now, normally my mom would take me to the doctor, but she was pretty busy, so I figured I'd take the bus. Luckily, my city overall has a very accessible bus system. They also have specific buses meant to assist people with disabilities, but the route from my house to the doctor's office aligned pretty much perfectly with one of the normal bus routes, so I figured I'd just use it. Now, all the normal buses are equipped with wheelchair ramps and a place to secure it. So the driver lowers the ramp and I board the bus. And due to COVID, the bus was pretty empty. There were a few people in the back and a woman with her child who's probably 6 years old seated at the front over the wheelchair area. Which is fine. The area does have a notice saying that people with disabilities have priority seating, but the general public can use it if nobody else needs to. Now, normally it would be a simple, "Hey, could you please move? I need to secure my wheelchair." But not this time. The conversation isn't exact because my memory isn't perfect, but here's my best recreation of the encounter. Now, I stayed quiet for most of it, and luckily the bus driver was absolutely amazing and he stood up for me. The bus driver looks at the mother and the daughter and said, "Hey, could you please move? This person needs access to the area." Now the mother said, "No, my daughter and I are sitting here." So the bus driver then looks at her and says, "You need to move to another seat so I can secure this passenger's wheelchair." The mom then looks at him and says, "No, they can sit somewhere else." The bus driver then tells her, "No, that's the only area with proper securement." And now this is the part where it became absurd. The mom says, "They can just take the next bus. I'm not moving." Bus driver says, "No, they have a right to use the bus. You need to move. You can either move seats now or you can leave." So at this point, I chimed in and said, "If it's really a bother, I can take the next bus." Now, I'm a very non-confrontational person. I would have been late to the doctor's appointment, but I don't like bothering people. The bus driver looks to me and says, "No, you can take this one." The mom then says, "See, even the cripple says he doesn't need it." The bus driver then tells her, "You can either move seats or we wait here until the police arrive." All the while, the mom's screaming that her and her daughter won't move and that this is harassment. Now at this point, the bus driver began to call someone. I'm unsure if it was actual police or what, but the mom ended up moving 2 seats over, thankfully. And I got this secured seat. She spent the rest of the time glaring at me, but honestly, I don't mind. Like, there are some completely entitled, inconsiderate people like the mom, but there's also great people like the bus driver. When I was getting off, he apologized for the mom's actions, even though it wasn't even his fault. In the end, I did get to the doctor's appointment on time, so all was well. I just hope the woman's daughter learns not to be like her mom somehow. Yeah, wouldn't that be great? But that might be too much to ask for, guys. The apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. Now, I really don't understand the woman's deal, though. The whole bus was empty like OP said. Now, I'm starting to think that she might have felt inferior that a person in a wheelchair had so much power over her. I don't know though, all I can say is she made a fool out of herself that day, and she should be ashamed of herself 100%, but you know what? These kind of people do not have shame, guys, they don't. So, during the final trimester of my last year in high school, we had to do a group project that needed to be finished by the end of the trimester, and was evaluated and graded in front of a jury of teachers, instead of an exam. I was paired with the biggest cocky idiot in class. Imagine a really entitled, arrogant prick. Every time we were supposed to work on the project, he would have some sort of excuse to not show up, and then demand that I work on it alone to make sure the project stayed on track and we get a good mark for it. Now, in the beginning, I tried to complain and talk to the teacher, but she would just say, "Hey, make it work, it's your project, you guys need to learn." So after a while, I stopped planning work meetings altogether. He would call me to ask how the project was going and if I was finished yet. And I would say something like, "Yeah, it's going well," or "I think I almost finished it," or "I'll send you the presentation to prepare for the jury." Now, little did he know, I had a trump card in my hand. Now, the project counted for 40% of the final grade. And me, doing well in the class, already have about 55 of the other 60%. So even if I got 0% on the project, I would still pass the class. This entitled idiot, however, had less. He had a lot less. So after it became clear that he was just going to use my work to pass the class, I decided to throw out the whole work for the project and keep the guy in the dark. The last bit went a lot easier than I expected, as he was happy with me telling him that everything was on track. On the last week before the presentation, though, things became harder. He wanted me to send the presentation, so he knew which part he had to present. I managed to stall for a few days with excuses, but 2 days before the presentation, I finally sent him an email with a PowerPoint, which was actually an MP3 file with a changed file extension. The next day, I switched off my phone. In the evening, I called him back with the excuse that my phone has issues, and he was panicking that there was something wrong with the PowerPoint. I told him not to worry, I'll check it out tonight and have a working PowerPoint for him tomorrow. I told him we should both come to the school at 8 a.m. so he could practice his part of the presentation before the jury appointment at 9 a.m. The next morning, I arrived at school a little before 9 a.m., having switched my phone off again. When he saw me, he approached me with a mix of panic and anger, but before I could explain anything, we were called into the room with the jury for our presentation. I told the guy not to worry and let me do all the talking. So we both greet the jury and I start the introduction. I said, "The original idea of today was for us to present our project XYZ, but since I already have enough points to pass the class and Mr. Entitled over here couldn't be bothered to put in any effort, I decided to skip it and instead have a nice day off today. That concludes our presentation. Thank you for your attention." At this point, I just walked out on 4 confused teachers and one guy with a mouth open so wide it looked like he was trying to eat a club sandwich vertically. Naturally, there was some backlash in the days after that. The teacher did call me for an explanation. I did explain that he didn't want anything to do with the project and that he relied on me to do it all while he sat back and collected the good mark. In the end, she recognized that I was a good student and I had passed the class without the project. The guy was very angry that he had to study over the summer for a re-exam. All in all, I was happy to have graduated and looked forward to going to college next year. So after the summer, I heard from friends that he failed his retry. And that, combined with other bad grades, caused him to have to redo his last school year. My friends, we have all known somebody like this, right? A person who wants all the grades without doing any work. And this is such a satisfying tale, guys. I would have paid money to see the look on the guy's face when OP pretty much wrecked his day with what he said to the teachers about not having a presentation at all and skipping it. Now, my wife's best friend is someone I'll call Karen, a harpy from hell. She makes everyone, even my wife sometimes, miserable. She also thinks she's smarter than everyone, and just stuck up enough to believe that no one would dare cross her. So a friend of ours, who I'll call Bill, recently bought a piece of property next door to us. He had a bad car accident in November, and he lives an hour away. He made me a legal agent of the property, which means that I almost have enough power as he does. So on the property, it has a small house on it that's unoccupied, but I keep an eye on things. Now, he bought the property because on it is a big asphalt parking lot. It used to be a lot for a small used car company. His reasoning was that during the bad winter months, he could park equipment and trucks from his other companies there. He also had me put up a huge "no parking, violators will be towed at owner's expense" signs all around it to make sure nobody uses it as free parking. So moving on. Sunday, I'm elbow deep into an RC submersible when my wife bursts into my study and yells at me to listen to something. My wife shows me a Facebook Live video, and it's her friend Karen. Karen was talking about how she was going away for a few days because she was so stressed out from always giving people advice and helping them through their problems, etc., etc. She then talked about how she decided to park her 46-foot, $35,000 camper next door to me. And seeing how our friend Bill was unreachable this week, I would have to look at it for the next 3 days. I then asked her if she got permission to do that, and she lied, saying yes. She said that Bill let her park there for as long as she wants. Now at this, I said, "Oh, really?" And she said she had Bill's permission to put it there, so early Sunday morning she had it towed there. Now at this, I was pissed. She does have the tendency to lie, so I went outside and there it was. Parked right there in the middle of the lot was her camper. Now I actually smiled because I had a perfect plan. Now, as being a manager of the property, I also had the right to have any vehicle towed off there, including that one. Now, I had 2 options. I could choose a nicer option, option A, which is a garage owned by a nice guy that doesn't charge the state maximum for tow and storage fees. Garage A is the type of garage where if you explained what happened, he might cut you a break. And then there's option B. Option B is the guy that doesn't care if he has to tow your car 15 feet, he's charging you the max and always charges the maximum storage fees. So of course I went with Garage B. I called the guy, gave him my name, and told him that I managed the property and to bring a fifth wheel. The guy came and had it gone in less than half an hour. Now, this is the best part yet. I didn't tell her it was towed until Tuesday morning. That's right, I waited from Sunday afternoon till Tuesday morning. Yesterday morning, she's on Facebook live streaming from her car, talking about how she was gonna go visit her camper for another laugh. And then I got on my Facebook Live, and my wife sent her a message to get on my live stream, like, now. When she was viewing, I said this: "Hey Karen, I hope you had a wonderful time. I do have something to tell you. So, I had your camper towed. With me being the property's manager and Bill being unavailable, I had to have it towed. Now don't take this personally, we can't let people think that they can park on here illegally whenever they want because it's a parking lot." I then gave her the address and phone number of the towing company who has the camper. I then told her, "So I was gonna call you on Sunday, but you seemed so stressed out that I thought you deserved a break. I mean, the camper's safe, that's all that matters, right?" Well, my friends, Facebook lit up like a Christmas tree. Her friends were all watching, and then the messages started. A few did condemn me, but most defended my actions as it was private property and she didn't get permission. Now, some even thought it was about time someone showed her that she wasn't all-powerful and no one was scared of her. Then it went quiet. Now, a normal person might be pissed, but understand, but she went the wounded Karen route. That afternoon, she gets back on Facebook Live again. Now, she gets on crying, fake crying, about how it was gonna cost her over $2,000 in fees because her husband won't be back until Friday to tow it back. And could someone please do it for her? She then asked everybody to donate to a GoFundMe page that she just started to help her pay for the fees. The answers to that were between no and hell no. So I did end up calling Bill and told him the whole story, and his answer was exactly, "Good, you want to play games, then be prepared to lose." The camper is still there, no one has volunteered to get it. A few said they would get it for gas money, but she tried to play it off as it would be helping her and that she owed so much in fees that she would owe them a favor. A favor no one could collect on because she has nothing to bargain with. Listen guys, I am so glad that OP stood his ground and got her towed, despite the Karen being his wife's best friend. Like, he's right, you have to teach those people that they can't just park wherever they want because it's a parking lot. I also found it so funny that she started a GoFundMe page, so people can help pay for her little mess up, guys. Like, no, Karen, you got yourself in this mess, you get yourself out of it. So first, let me give you some background to help you understand a few things. So I run a cattle operation that I took over from my now deceased father. I have a little over 100 acres, give or take, and my land and cattle are guarded by 12 guard dogs. Now this particular breed is big. They are half Maremma and half Sarpleninac, and the head of my biggest male and female is level with my middle rib. And I'm a 6'2" guy, so you can imagine just how big they are. Now, all my dogs are trained to patrol the limits of my pasture and help clean the calves right after they're born. They are also trained to guide any other people who come onto the property directly to me, and they can be very protective of me, their turf, and the cattle. Now, I've seen these dogs literally tear apart coyotes who got too close to the herd, but otherwise, they are gentle giants. So now that I've given all the background you'll need, let's get on to the story. So I was patrolling the fence with one of my females, Freya, who's a total kiss-ass, to make sure the fence wasn't knocked over by a deer when I heard Freya huff and bark. Now I look over to where she's pointing and saw my two alpha males escorting a whole family towards me. There was a husband, a wife, a boy, and a girl who were wearing swimwear. Once they were near me, I called the dogs over to me, and the father starts to loudly complain that the dogs had tried to attack him and his family. I merely raised an eyebrow and said, "Sir, if that were the case, you wouldn't be standing here right now. These dogs could tear you apart." Now, the dad then starts asking to speak to the park ranger or the manager of this nature reserve, which got me quite confused. I then said, this isn't a nature reserve, it's a private ranch. Why would there be a nature reserve in the middle of a bunch of corn and soybean fields, in farming country? And then the mother piped up and said, "Well, it looked like it might be a nature reserve, so we thought it was." Now I could only shake my head in disbelief at what I was hearing. The mother then went on to explain that they'd come here to look for a place to swim since the local lakeside beach was too full, and they found my creek and thought it would be a good place to swim. And not long after, my dogs found them and brought them to me. I apologized for yelling and getting upset, but I told them that they need to leave. But the dad insisted that they were gonna swim, and I can't make them leave. How it's a free country and they can go and do as he pleases since he's a sovereign citizen. Now I look up at him and asked, "Did that hurt?" And he asked, "Did what just hurt?" I then replied, "When all that stupid fell out of your throat." Because you're not a sovereign citizen. That stopped being a thing when Abe Lincoln died, and you aren't allowed to trespass on private land. Now, I'm gonna tell you again. You need to go back to your vehicle and leave right now. At this point, the dad starts to get red in the face and starts yelling that I'm not as smart as I think I am and how I'm not gonna make a fool out of him in front of his own family, which he was doing all on his own. So while this guy's ranting and raving, my dogs start to growl, while putting themselves in front of me as they know to do. Now at this point, I start getting worried that this guy will set them off, and I don't want that for his sake more than anyone else, since, as I mentioned, these dogs have killed coyotes, so I don't want to see what they can do to a human. Now I try to calm the dogs down, but the dad decides that he's gonna act on his anger and insecurities by making a grab for me. Now my heart stops for a moment as my alpha tackles the guy and grabs him by the throat and holds him there, growling. I yell at the dad to not move while his family started to panic. I managed to quiet them down and I yelled at my dog, "No, leave it, come." And fortunately he listens and comes back. I then chewed out the dad once again for trespassing and picking a fight and provoking my dogs and almost getting himself killed, all for the sake of proving how much of a man he is. I then help him up, brush him off, and check to make sure that he wasn't bitten, and I try to calm the woman and the kids down. I tell them one last time that they need to leave and guide the family back to their car. They got back to their car that had been parked on the side of the gravel, and I once again apologized for what happened. The dad calmed down and apologized as well before starting his car and driving off. It still pisses me off how stupid and entitled that family was. That stupidity and entitlement almost got them killed. I'm just glad everybody was okay and hopefully learned a lesson. I guess it goes to show no matter what, the craziest things can happen to anyone. My friends, what a ridiculous story. Entitled people truly have no fear. Like the dad almost got ripped apart by those dogs for trying to grab a random person whom he's never met. Like the guy seriously deserves a trophy for the silliest man of the year. Like, come on. You trespass on someone's property, refuse to leave after you've been given warnings, and then decide to attack the owner while his massive guard dogs are standing there. Like, oh, come on, guy. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of r/entitled people. Guys, we survived another one. If you enjoyed the stories in this episode, do hit that thumbs up. And if you missed the last episode of r/entitled people on this channel, I will link it right here. A Karen abandons her kids in a video game store and gets mad that police are called. It's such a crazy story, so check it out if you haven't, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I love you.